What if the best way to learn a language was by saying nothing at all? Today we're going to look at a video of somebody who talks about dreaming Spanish, which uses the ALG method, so automatic language growth, where they learn simply through input. Let's get going. I should say to start off, ALG is not just input. I think eventually you want to get to the point where you're outputting, but for the beginning portion, large portion of the learning or acquiring is no output. So today we're going to look at a video of a man who has been learning using dreaming Spanish. I'm going to give you a critique on it.
Más de 2000 horas de input comprensible has estado estudiando con Dreaming Spanish y estábamos viendo el roadmap y ahora mismo estarías más allá del nivel 7, ¿verdad?
Sí, más allá.
Entonces, debería cumplirse lo que pone en el roadmap. Por ejemplo, el punto 1. ¿Entiendes contenido general sin esfuerzo?
Okay, so he's been learning or doing it, I guess, acquiring for 2,000 hours. And so he should be at level 7 in the roadmap for Dreaming Spanish, which says you can understand any general content effortlessly.
Como novelas, periódicos, televisión, cine.
I will say, of all the aspects of the roadmap, yeah, my understanding is pretty good.
This is one thing too, like, I'm not trying to critique his Spanish, but the fact that he is using English to respond would suggest also that he doesn't have the words to say for Spanish to reply to this, or it's not the first thing that comes to mind. Now, that's not always necessarily true. People who have high levels of fluency in a language can use whatever language they want to respond, especially if they know the speaker understands them. Like sometimes when I speak to my Chinese friends who speak English, I'll switch back and forth. Whereas if I speak Chinese to somebody who doesn't speak English, I'm less likely to use English. I will use it though. I use it a lot for like filler words. So words like, so, and, I'll do that. Yeah, but so he has pretty good comprehension. Like he's talking to, I assume, a native speaker of Spanish, and he's responding in English doing like crosstalk.
I watch movies, I listen to audiobooks, we play video games with characters with French accents, and generally speaking, my understanding is pretty good. But it's not 100%. I'm still learning every time I'm experiencing input, so that could be considered effort. Let's say I'm getting 85-90% most of the time.
También pone que puedes hablar de forma fluida y sin esfuerzo y que podrías tener un pequeño acento.
So it says that he can speak fluently and like converse with native speakers, but it seems like he struggles with that, which is why he's using English.
Sí, solo un pequeño acento.
Yo creo que tienes un acento exótico y maravilloso. A mí me gusta mucho, pero tienes acento. Yo puedo notar perfectamente que no eres español.
Gracias. Hablo como un gringo o como dices, un guiri.
Sí, y a mí me gusta mucho, pero se nota que tu acento es de fuera de España, que es extranjero.
Absolutely.
Dice que puedes cometer algunos errores. ¿Cometes algún error? ¿Uno o dos errores?
Casi nunca. No, claro. Miles cada día. Miles de errores.
That's the thing too, is like with mistakes or errors, I would argue that a mistake is something you do that's wrong, but you realize you did something wrong. Whereas an error is something that you don't realize is wrong, and so you don't notice it because you don't know it's wrong. If he says I make hundreds or thousands or millions of mistakes, like I make thousands of mistakes every day, he's probably saying generally that's what he feels, but whether or not he makes that many mistakes, he's not going to know that, especially if he makes more than that and he doesn't realize it's an error.
There's so much I still don't understand about especially two types of past tense, or por y para are still a nightmare for me. When to say el or un and when not to. Soy abogado, pero soy un genio. Those kinds of things. And gender, you know me. Every sentence I mess up the gender on some words. Yeah, some mistakes.
También dice que
the thing with gender too in Spanish is for the most part, there are rules for how, like, when to use which gender with a word. And if you, like, learn, this is part of morphological awareness, but if you, like, learn some of those rules, it becomes easier for you to remember what gender goes with which word. Not always, but usually if a word ends in it's like la. Not always, though. But I do remember the word, like, bufanda, like la bufanda, I think is a scarf. I remember this because when I was in Spanish class, the teacher, really great teacher, super nice, It was an advanced grammar class, and the teacher was talking, I don't know why we're talking about La Bufanda, but we were. And my classmate whispered in my ear, like, that sounds like a girl's name, like Bufanda. We just like started laughing in class, and the teacher's like, what's so funny? And like, we don't want to say, because she was pretty serious. She's a nice lady, but she's pretty serious. So I feel like she would have been irritated at that. For this, Dreaming Spanish Roadmap Level 7, no one considers you a learner anymore, which seems kind of high, especially given like his experience.
Nadie te considera ya un estudiante. ¿Tú crees que dejamos de aprender y de ser estudiantes del idioma o de aprender un idioma?
I feel like at 2,000 hours, I finally am a student.
Ooh, that goes way against what Dreaming Spanish does. And Dreaming Spanish obviously isn't an exact science. The roadmap is kind of to give motivation and to give a general idea. But if he's saying, I feel like I'm just now becoming a student, like I can now be considered a student, that's like the exact opposite of what the roadmap says.
I've like set the baseline and I can now start learning. Yeah, now I can start learning. This one kind of makes me laugh, that I'm not a student. If I just start talking with a native speaker, they're still going to have to be very kind and very patient, and they're going to probably consider me at a very beginner level as far as speaking goes.
Y por último dice que puedes ser un miembro eficiente de la sociedad. Esta es una parte un poco extraña del roadmap.
Yeah, to be an effect, like in a part of society. I assume they mean like professional, like you have a working, like you can use Spanish in work or in your profession or in like your life. I'm assuming is what they mean.
Considerarte eficiente en la sociedad con 1,500 horas o más de input.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that means, but if I think about myself as a member of society in the English-speaking world, I'm a professor, I have a meaningful job, teaching people abstract, cosas. I was going to say abstract things that I'm passionate about. I make friendships easily. I communicate effectively. I don't know what an effective member of society is at my Spanish level. I can wake up and order food and find a bathroom.
That's the thing too, like if he's at 2,000 hours and he feels comfortable doing that, but things beyond that might be too complicated, then you really have to think like, how good is ALG? Now, people who love this type of method, of course, are like, oh, he didn't do it right, I understand. But that's the thing, like if the method is so difficult to actually do properly, is it worth doing at all? Like I've seen a lot of stories, we're gonna look at one on Reddit in a second, but like people talk about how ALG is so effective, but I didn't do it right. And if you just do it right, it's gonna be so good for you. Like I've heard so many things in my life about this kind of thing. My parents take vitamins and they always tell me like, if you just start young, you're gonna be so healthy when you're older and you're never gonna have disease. And you're like, people have this idea about a lot of things. If ALG is so effective and so good, it shouldn't be that hard for people to do it properly. And it seems like it is. It seems like the majority of people who do it end up doing it wrong. Well, then it probably isn't that great of a method. Which brings me to my next point. Dr. Marvin J. Brown, who supposedly developed the method, although I would argue it's just a branch off of Krashen's method, he never did any research on it. There's no research on ALG, at least not in English. And if the method is so good, why didn't he, a researcher, publish research on it? He didn't do any. He wrote a book, but he didn't do any research on it. That's questionable. There's no way for us to verify it. And then even now, like I've searched on many databases. I cannot find any research, at least in English. Perhaps there's research in other languages, but I can't find any research on ALG. I can't find research on how effective it is, on what students think about it, what teachers think about it. I don't find anything.
I can do those things.
Bueno, podrías encontrar el baño si alguien te dice dónde está.
Exactly. Pero ¿dónde? ¿Dónde está el baño, señor?
Genial, pues muchas gracias, Marc. Creo que nos queda un poco más claro el nivel 7. Entendemos que es simplemente una referencia y que no es real, que este roadmap no se ha hecho con la intención de que sea exacto, sino de motivar a la gente a llegar o a alcanzar un objetivo de aprendizaje del idioma.
Exactly. I'll keep you posted at 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 hours to see if I feel like I'm there, but some things just aren't going to happen. My accent is not going to disappear. I'm not going to know how to pronounce R's without actually training my mouth. Yeah, there's some things that I think I'll have to work at that won't happen no matter how much input I get.
Yeah, that's true. Like with things like pronunciation, babies, especially babies, like if we're going to compare ourselves to babies don't just start off talking in their language. they have to practice and they have to like play with the sounds, which is what babies do when they coo. And then as they're beginning to acquire the language, they'll start incorporating the sounds of their mother tongue into their like cooing noises, and then they end up speaking, babbling, and like they do all these different things, right? But it takes time and it takes practice. It doesn't just like click on like a light. And I think people, when they think of language immersion or like ALG, or even like Krashen's natural approach, they just assume it'll just happen. That's just how nature works. But that's not how it works. Language learning is not a vacuum, and when you're pulling parts of the learning out, like, well, you shouldn't talk, and you shouldn't interact, and you shouldn't this, and you shouldn't that, that's all a part of the learning process. So if you pull those things out, of course you're not going to do very well. Like 2,000 hours and that's all he's got? It's not very amazing to me. Sure, he might understand things pretty well, but even he said only like 80 or 90% of the time. At 2,000 hours, that's crazy to me, especially because the roadmap says that he should be fluent and be able to talk to native speakers pretty well. That's weird to me because even now, I mean, to be fair, I've been in China for 10 years. I don't know how many hours I've been exposed to Chinese. Being here doesn't mean I'm, like right now I'm in my room, you know, like there's no Chinese going on. So like most of the time I'm not out in public or talking to people in Chinese. So my exposure, maybe you could say, is an hour a day, 1 to 2 hours a day maybe. So it's like, okay, 300, 600. Yeah, I guess if that's the case. But there are plenty of days I do not go out, and there are plenty of days I get zero Chinese exposure. I game with my friends in America, you know. People don't really think about like what this method means and like when it doesn't work, and it seems like it doesn't work as well as people say it does. Of course, there's going to be people, rather than admitting like, yeah, maybe this isn't the best way, people who love it so much are unwilling to see the reasons behind it. Well then, to be honest, it's not even worth having a conversation with those people. So this is a thing where somebody asked about automatic language growth, and they're interested in it. And there's a few things I want to focus on here. Here they just explain what it is. I'm not going to talk about that. You can read it if you want. Here, this person talks about their experience, and they said that they didn't know very much Thai. And when they first started, they did an hour a day of italki lessons where the teacher would like describe things, and they did passive learning to native content through the rest of their day. And they said it worked, but it's crazy inefficient compared to real ALG. I hired whoever would work for me and began using real ALG for comprehensible Thai. From feedback from others, especially one case study in particular that was followed and documented well, which they're not referring, what case study is this? I can vouch 100% for the understanding side of the equation. Sure, that makes sense, like you, just like the man in the video, right? Like you have pretty good understanding. But as I made mistakes early, like early output translation, see, like they can't even do it right. So then they're gonna say, well, it didn't work exactly. But if you just did it this way, then it will work. Then I want you to find me a case that is documented, has like actual study, actual people who have some type of specialty or specialties in this area, looking at it and examining it. Give me like concrete evidence for this rather than anecdotes, because I've only heard anecdotes thus far. Like people who love this method and talk about how it's the greatest thing in the world, give me concrete evidence. Saying, I have a friend who did it. Great. Show me evidence. Show me their journey of learning through ALG and show me where they started and where they are now. Yeah, and then even here, so right now I'm between conversation and fluent. I think they mean like conversationally fluent and like native speaker fluency. I'm not sure. And once I go to Thailand and live my life in Thai language later, currently in the US, I'm sure it'll naturally become fluent with time. That's an assumption. I have plenty of friends who are at this level, moved to China, they're still at that level. You know, like this is an assumption. That's what I mean. People don't know what they don't know, and they think that they have these fantasies or this like imaginations that if I just do this thing a certain way, it'll work out properly. Just like with ALG here, like, well, I didn't do it the right way, but if I did, I would be better, and I just know that. Well, how do you know that? Where's your evidence for that? Well, I heard a story. That's not evidence. Okay, so I can tell you that I'm 100% certain that this method can build stronger understanding without any other techniques, tricks, gimmicks. Okay, sure. With less than a year at 3 hours per day, you can reach level 5 comprehension comfortably. Probably like daily conversations you can understand pretty well, but like if it's like higher level, it'd be a little bit more difficult. I'm highly confident in the method's ability to make you a beast in comprehension without any effort on your part, other than finding the time to do it. Yeah. I mean, 3 hours a day is kind of a lot for a lot of people. It's a lot. I mean, if you break it up, you could probably do it, but I'm just saying like for a lot of people, 3 hours every day for an entire year, that's kind of a lot. For those outside of Thailand to reach this level of understanding, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's true. Like my boyfriend, his comprehension in English when I met him, he was 19 when I met him. His comprehension was pretty good. He's never been abroad. And part of it was because he loved American TV shows and like American music, and so he would constantly be like inputting that. So yeah, his comprehension was pretty high. Now there are times where I say something and he will like have no idea what I'm saying, even though it's like basic stuff. And other times he might know a really complicated word that I would never expect him to know, and I say it and he knows what it is, you know. So yeah, so to be able to get to that level in a year, that's pretty good. But again, 3 hours a day, a lot. Oh, here he's comparing all Japanese all the time with ALG. which is similar, but I think do they call it AJAT? I don't know. I think all Japanese all the time you start off with like intentional studying and then you move into passive input. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know. Yeah, but then this person is saying that like ALG was much faster for building comprehension. So if you've already begun with translation or early output, stop for now or relinquish any thought that'll reap the full output rewards of the method because you won't. Yeah, so it's sort of like if you already mess up, you're not going to get the full benefit. Okay, well, too bad for everyone who's done it wrong. Experience is important. Yeah, I would agree with this here. But so they say like enjoy like immersing in what's happening, not in the language itself. So your focus is in the language, your focus is the experience you're getting while using the language, and that's really crucial too. Watch a show in your native language, right? What would you normally do? That's really true. When we watch things in our native language, if we have words we don't know, we're very comfortable with that. We're very comfortable with like, oh, whatever, I'll figure it out as I go. But when it's a non-native language, or second language, or third language, we have this thing where it's like, I don't like that, I don't know that word, and I want to look it up. You can kind of untrain this. Some people might not naturally have that, but I think a lot of people, especially language learners, people who like breaking language apart, they want to know everything about the word. And that can really slow down a lot of things for you. This is also why it's important to watch things that are not like super complex when you're starting out. Intermediate level too, like if you're at a higher level, like you want to make sure that you're getting things that are interesting to you and that have a story to it where you can focus on the story and the ideas around it rather than trying to understand each word as it's used. Plus, not always, but most of the time, if somebody's using a word in a story, you're probably going to hear it later again. Like people tend to speak cyclically or at least like repetitively. Not always, but you can kind of get a feel for things. So like I remember I was watching The Handmaid's Tale and one of the characters, Serena, uses the word recalcitrance. I think she only used it once in that show. But when she said it, I kind of got a gist for what it was. But I looked it up anyway, and I was right. Like, I was able to guess from the context what she was saying. So, I mean, that's my native language. But if it was a second language, I wouldn't really need to look that up. I just feel like I need to. Okay, and then the third thing is sufficient input. 100 hours, obviously, you're going to want to hit that. This is part of the problem too, is this, if you are only doing like an hour a day, it's going to be slow. It's going to be slow for sure. So then, yeah, you're going to hit like 3 hours a day. That's a lot though. That's a lot of time for people, and people don't always have that. That's why you see people like, I learned this language in a year, and it's like, yeah, I spent 10 hours a day doing it. Like, okay, that's not realistic for the majority of people. People have lives and jobs and families. For natural output to grow, you need natural opportunities. Yes. For meaningful interaction, absolutely, 100%. Yes, meaningful interactions with human beings. That's true. And that's why I've mentioned before things like the interaction hypothesis or interactive theories for language learning. We learn like together and we use peers. And so for example, like a child talking to a child who's slightly older, or like to adults, or like those kind of things. Even to each other, like you learn certain social cues and timing and turn taking, and like those are all parts of language, even though we don't really think about it. Human interaction is like one of the most important parts of learning the language. And these types of methods, when they say like you want only input, you want only this, you want that, it kind of, I think it pulls away from the holistic science behind learning the language, and that is it takes input, it takes output, it takes interaction, it takes all these things together. The method will absolutely build your comprehension and build it fast from a long-term perspective, although it feels slow at first, but to get the natural output, you need to make sure you do the method right from the start and the whole way through. So that's very difficult for people. Which again, then if it's so difficult that people can't do it, or people have a hard time doing it, why push the method this way? So then you want no translation or early output. Okay. I'm guessing what they mean is like if you have a word, you look it up. Well, you wouldn't look it up, I guess, because you can't translate, and you're not going to understand what the dictionary says. You're going to have to have like a picture dictionary, which means everything you're going to be learning in the beginning is probably going to be things that are concrete, not abstract. Make sure you're immersing in the experience of the story. Do not focus on the nuts and bolts of the language at all. Realize it will require many hundreds of hours before you even start the process of outputting, a process itself that will take time too. It is a marathon, not a sprint. Once you're ready to start outputting meaningful interactions with real human beings in which you do not feel anxiety and you're able to say whatever comes up. Okay, they've mentioned this case study 3 times in this, but they don't say who did the case. Like, again, how do I find this? They just like play this for the free course. I mean, that's nice, it's free, we like free things. But it's just frustrating, like there's no, what's this case study? Is it her case study? I mean, check it out, it's free, but it's gonna take a while. And how high up do they go? Do they have playlists? Advanced?
สวัสดีค่ะครูฟ้า
สวัสดีค่ะครูหญิง สวัสดีค่ะนักเรียน
For intermediate learners. Okay. Why did they say advanced then? Here it says immersion conversation lesson for intermediate learners. Yeah, but again, like, this isn't necessarily bad for learning input stuff, but it's not going to help with your output. And I've mentioned this before with comprehensive input. Like, it's great for learning input. It's great for that. It's great for comprehension, but it's not great for helping you output things. That's the issue. And people who love this kind of method think that it's a, like, panacea for learning language, and it's not. And again, even in these, like, on the Reddit posts, like, oh, I didn't do it right, but if you did, like, I've seen so many people talk about this, oh, I didn't do it the right way, but if you just did it the right way, then you're going to learn it really well. Like, okay, can you find me somebody who did it the right way? Documented, you know, so that I can actually see? Then we can talk. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I don't hate ALG, I'm just letting you know that. I don't hate Krashen's natural approach. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not like comprehensive and exhaustive of how language is learned. And this is why well, ALG has not been, but Krashen's hypotheses for language learning, which are 5 hypotheses, comprehensible input is just one. But that's been studied, and people have found flaws in the hypotheses. They've tweaked it, they've adjusted it, you know, like, there's truths to it, but there's also issues with it. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.